Hello and welcome to Smart Money, brought to you by Daily Investor, South Africa's biggest online investment publication. I'm Alishia Seckam, and this time bringing you our first in-studio interview with Gary Booysen, who's founder of Rand Swiss. He's going to be talking us through his venture into the capital markets arena and positioning and growing a full-service broker business in South Africa right now. Gary, thanks so much for joining us today. So you began mingling with the stockbroking fraternity around about 2008, 2009, and that in the depths of the financial crisis, initially actually as a financial media personality before landing a job as a trader. And while it was quite a few years later after that you decided to branch out, why the decision to launch Rand Swiss?
I don't know if I was a financial media personality back then. I think I was a humble editor that had to work on other people's content. But I actually remember the first interview that we did. It was actually my first time in front of a camera on one of the channels. You interviewed me, I think it was in 2009. But yeah, why did I launch Rand Swiss? It's, I suppose, a mix of arrogance and stupidity, I can say. I think anyone who launches a business has to be a little bit crazy, to be honest. But also, I think a financial services business or launching a firm like Rand Swiss is very different from what a normal entrepreneur is. Because it's a very structured environment. It's almost like launching a law firm. You know, you don't face the same risk. And I mean, I have ultimate respect for entrepreneurs that come up with a product and a concept, and they go through the prototype phase and do it. I mean, that's something totally different to launching a financial services company. Let me tell you, because it's actually quite difficult to fail when you do this. Because there's just so much regulation. There's so many sort of guiding blocks as you go along. And I suppose I was very fortunate that I had worked in the industry for a long time. I had the right qualifications beforehand. Before you launch a business like this, there's probably 10 to 15 years, probably longer groundwork that you've done. But why actually did I pull the trigger and decide that it's better to have our own brand and go out and do it ourselves? I suppose it's why anyone does launch a business, and that's because you see a gap in the market, you see something that no one else is doing, or you see a way of doing business that you think would work better than the existing frameworks that you're working within, and then eventually it becomes so obvious to you can't help but do it. And I think that's really what drove me to do it. I mean, I never really expected as a young person to be given a job when I was growing up. I was always taught no one's going to give you anything, no one's going to give you a job. You must create your own job. So I think that was kind of always part of my ethos. So it was just a logical step. I couldn't get it right within. It was at that stage I was working for a listed member firm of the JSE. And I couldn't get kind of my vision working the way that I wanted to, although I was in charge of a fairly large trading desk. And I decided, by then I had met Alishia and I'd already got some media exposure. So I thought I had the marketing angle for the business, and I had the fundamental knowledge on how to build the products and who the partners were and how the spaghetti of the financial system in South Africa works. And it was just the next logical step.
Yeah. And it's that kind of thinking that sparks an evolution in any market in the first place, right? So how would you say the South African investment landscape has evolved over, let's say, the past 10 years?
Yeah, I want to say it's evolved. It has evolved. It hasn't stagnated. The South African investment landscape is an interesting one, and I think one of the things that have changed in the last say five to 7 years is that as much as everyone has in all different businesses has faced these supply chain issues, whether you're moving goods around, whether you're trying to import things, whatever it is. I mean, COVID really changed things. We found that the supply chains within financial services have become quite difficult. We're struggling with a product provider, and it's product spread. It's the skills in the industry that really are a challenge for us at the moment. And I don't know if that's immigration or what the issue is, or it's lack of training programs. But when you're working in the financial services sector, you're very reliant on many different parties, and it's not as simple as I've got this great idea, and I can kind of vertically integrate start to finish. I'm going to build a factory and build a product.
Yeah.
In financial services, you're reliant on so many other parts of the system, and that system in the last 5 to 7 years has struggled to an extent, and that for me has been a little bit concerning. But that's one facet. So that's one facet of what's happened over the last years. And I want to be overly negative on South Africa's financial system, but I suppose the positive is that we have seen a huge engagement to more of the mass market in specifically in securities broking. So the South African environment is really, it's a story of two parts. You've got the ultra high net worth clients, and you've got essentially the mass market as well. And there's a very small segment in almost the middle class. That is growing, and I think that's where Rand Swiss is finding its niche. And I can tell you a story about our high net worth clients. That years ago, I won't give the bank's name, but essentially they came to us and said, "Oh, do you have any clients we consider ultra high net worth clients, 100 million Rand plus?" And they said, would you like to use our products and services for some of your ultra high net worth clients? And we said, "Oh, what do you mean? We've got a few, but." Yeah. What are you going to give them? Because those are the clients that you really want to hold on to. And they say, "Oh no, we'll get our private jet to fly out with an analyst, and they'll pick up your client and their investment team, and we'll fly them to London, and we'll show them, if they're interested in property, we'll have a property analyst on board, which will tell them about the different buildings that they're going to see, and we'll wine and dine them properly." And I thought, well, you have a private jet. That's quite impressive. Like, we don't have a private jet. If you were wondering, Alishia, it's been 10 years, but I still don't have a private jet.
It's coming.
Oh, one day, we hope. But it's a very competitive landscape at the top end of the market, because everyone is chasing that capital. And you're not just chasing against very competent local providers. You're chasing the best and the brightest in the world. You're facing the UBSs, the Credit Suisses, the Goldman Sachses, the Morgan Stanleys, and their investment teams, which have hugely deep pockets compared to even South African banks. And I think that is a very almost oversaturated part of the market. But where we've seen enormous development is in the lower end of the market with platforms like Easy Equities. And I've got to say, I've got enormous respect for Charles Savage and their team there, because they've taken essentially people that were never part of the market, and they've brought them in, and there's been a lot of financial education. It's great for broadcasters, and it's great for anyone that any financial publication. And remember, my background was in financial publications. It's amazing for them, because suddenly the audience is so much bigger. I still question, can you do ethical? Ethical is like a bad word, but can you do effective, really value-add service there? Because if you've got 20 Rand in an account and you're offering someone a share account, but your fees are going to be 3 or it's difficult to make it financially viable for the business as well as the customer, and that's a challenge. And I think through technology, there's been huge advances there, but it's still, for me, it's difficult. So where we kind of play is kind of that middle segment, which weirdly has been growing, which I think is just underserviced in South Africa. You've got the top guys getting service, the bottom guys are now getting very good service through technology. But as you say, we're a full service broker, so it's for people that they need the advice, they need someone that they want to talk to about their portfolio, they want to be able to WhatsApp their dealer, they want to pick up a phone and speak to someone when they have an account issue. Tax season's just opened, and they've got a question on their tax statements, and you can't, platform won't pick up your phone. An ultra high net worth client, that's expected. Yeah. But in the middle market, there's a huge opportunity, because I think South Africans are just so used to poor service. And if you just give them even mediocre service, they're so impressed. And I think that's really where our niche has been, and where the opportunity has come.
It's so interesting, because as much as you talk about the challenges, it highlights the opportunities still in the market, right, that are to be leveraged off. So in your opinion, Gary, what are some of the exciting opportunities in the South African market that still need to be capitalized on? I would assume that this is one of them.
For us, definitely. And there's plenty of opportunity. I'm not going to tell you where they are for Rand Swiss. We'll announce when we launch our product. But I think, if I look at the investment landscape, because we work a lot offshore, we work a lot locally as well. Obviously, we sit in the JSE building. We've got the number one rated, industrial small and mid cap analyst speaking to our clients. It's we do a lot of work within the local market. Yet the demand is totally offshore. Through no desire, or through no decision of mine to say we want to invest offshore versus locally. I mean, we essentially have to, flow where our clients push us. I mean, probably 85 to 90% of our business, our client assets are now sitting internationally. And it's where the demand is coming from at the moment. Although we do a lot of work in the local market. Now, I think that's, you ask where the opportunity is. I'm not saying that there isn't opportunity overseas. I think there's fantastic opportunity overseas. And the problem is that overseas markets are just such a large organism that you can't be, well, offshore is an opportunity. Yeah, which part of offshore? There's the whole world that you can invest in. So there's that spread that's interesting. But you look at our local market, is there opportunity in our listed securities? I mean, they are cheap. They are so cheap. You've got companies trading on, 3, 4, 5 times multiples, 5 times earnings. I mean, they are so, and you can see the private equity players and the big international companies are seeing it, and we're seeing it with the delistings that we're seeing on the JSE at the moment. People, we saw it with Telkom. Okay, they have rebuffed the offer from the consortium and former CEO Sipho Maseko, but people are seeing value in our businesses and they want to take big chunks of our stock. Unfortunately, the retail market, which is primarily where we deal, doesn't see that opportunity. But the professional investors are definitely seeing it. And we just don't have that catalyst of people getting excited and actually coming and buying up the stock. So it's difficult to say that's an opportunity. But if you look at in the private equity space in South Africa, so entrepreneurs, there's more opportunity in South Africa than you can possibly imagine. You throw a stone, you hit an opportunity in South Africa. And I don't know. I mean, I was fortunate enough to I lived overseas for on and off about 5 years, and you look at a developed market versus South Africa. It is almost impossible to launch a business in a developed market. It is difficult because everything has been done. Go to America. There's 100 types of cereal on the shelf. You want to launch a cereal company? Well, good luck. You better be better than 100 other players. In South Africa, hey, we don't even have food on our shelves sometimes. Okay, that's a COVID thing, but we do. Our retailers are fantastic. But you want to launch a cereal company in South Africa, it's very easy. You don't have the same competitive landscape. So I think for entrepreneurs, I mean, look, we have where there's a problem, business can generally fix it. So we have an energy crisis, you just change the regulations slightly, and suddenly there's a huge opportunity in solar at the moment. And there's so many opportunities in South Africa. It's as an entrepreneur, I could not think of a more fertile ground to launch a business. As an investor, though, with the regulation at the upper end of the market, and it really, for me, it comes down to regulation. It's difficult because I need to see a catalyst which will get our businesses to re-rate on our exchange.
Okay, so on that note, right, because it wasn't too long ago that South Africa held the allure of an emerging market. I mean, this is where returns were to be generated, right? But there's no hiding from the fact that there has been a shift in sentiment. So what's your views on investing in South Africa with a long-term view right now?
Well, it's kind of binary, isn't it? I feel like we're either going to work or we're not going to work. But what is my view on investing in South Africa over the long term? So I think we have fantastic.
You were leaning to more an optimistic
tone.
I
was. No, I think it's binary. So there's two, and I'll give you the reason. It's either going to work or it's not. And I can tell you what will make it work and what won't make and what will make it fail to an extent. But yes, there's amazing opportunity in the assets. I mean, you look at something like Distell and what Heineken is doing with Distell. It's a fantastic business. It's got amazing brands. It's got a captive market. And up until now, South African investors could have invested in it, but now we're essentially going to give it away. We give it away yes, we get our premium because the stock will pop when the deal goes through. But that long-term asset, now you have to buy, you have to get access to that through Heineken instead of, through our local exchange. I mean, that's a huge pity. And the problem is, the longer term is, as we see fewer and fewer businesses listed on our exchange, there are fewer and fewer opportunities for retail investors to invest in those businesses. Those assets become harder to access. When you take a business off exchange and you move it into a private equity fund, the average person can no longer get access to that. And that for me it's a concern. It's a real concern about having your money parked in a diversified local equity portfolio, just waiting and saying, oh, well, these are the best of what we have left, when there is this huge opportunity and this huge spread of investments that you can do. And I feel our market is becoming a lot narrower, which is very sad. Also, we've seen volumes drop off. I mean, this month, the volume on our exchange has just collapsed, which is very sad. But is there opportunity in South Africa? Absolutely. We have incredibly skilled people. And if as you say, that sentiment turns and we can start to retain the skills, South Africa is an amazing place to live, and amazing people in South Africa as well. But why are we not activated? Why are we so pessimistic about ourselves? And for me, it comes down to a change in almost the regulatory landscape. If you made it easier for people to hire and fire, like you would have an explosion of business. If you had policy certainty around our mining charter, for example, you would have huge investment into our resources. Jobs would explode, but there's no certainty in policy. So you change that, and you change everything. I mean, and I can give you an example within the financial services sector. I mean, obviously we've just been grey listed. That's terrible for investors. I can tell you the difficulty with which we have to the hoops that we now have to jump through at SARS just to get a foreign tax clearance certificate. It's not that there's different rules around it. It's just it used to take us 5 to 10 days. It's now taking us 40 days. There's that administrative burden. On top of that, the regulator, with all the best intentions, has looked at this and said, we need to improve compliance in terms of FIC and our FICA processes to essentially get us off the grey list. So instead of making the laws simpler, which will enhance compliance, they've almost panicked and made the laws more complicated. The reaction has been, let's write more laws, because the intention is, if we have more laws, the environment will be better regulated. But that doesn't happen. Like, what happens is, the more laws you have, the more difficult it is to follow, and you actually see compliance dropping. You're taking people that weren't criminals before, and you're making them non-compliant. So that is an enormous challenge.
And inevitably, it increases the cost of doing business in the country as well. So let's talk actually setting up shop, because you alluded to it in one of your answers, that it's a different kind of investment altogether, right? With different kind of return on that investment at the end of the day. With a solid track record and the benefit of hindsight that you have right now, what advice would you have for South African entrepreneurs thinking about setting up an investment company at this point?
An investment company. So, like I said, an investment company is very different from any other company, because essentially your client base, you know a lot more about your product than your client base does. So you hear the words bandied about in the industry all the time: integrity, trust. These are very important concepts, like in the marketing pitches, and there's a good reason for that. When you're working with people's money, you almost, like, my advice to anyone setting up a business is that you need to take that very, very seriously, because you're working with people's money. This is not something, a normal entrepreneur, when I say a normal entrepreneur that's launching a clothing brand, you take risks. If people will buy your shirts, they can see it's a shirt, it keeps me warm, it looks nice, and you can market, but the damage that you'll do if you do it incorrectly is you bought a bad shirt. You don't buy a shirt again. The difference is when it's very easy for someone that is less ethical to convince someone to give them all their money. Very easy to do that. And as a business, you will be very successful as a business in the short term, because you can build up a lot of assets, you can charge a lot of fees, and you'll do it within the regulatory frameworks. You're not going to go to jail or anything like that, but you will materially damage people's lives. I would say equivalent to a doctor operating on a patient, and not having the correct background to perform spinal surgery. You don't just wing it and go, oh, well, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. There's this huge responsibility that sits on you, because your patient is trusting you to do it correctly. So, I mean, definitely have the prior knowledge. I mean, you've got to have the prior knowledge. You've got to, and this is where the regulator is very good in terms of continuous professional development and all the barriers that they have set. I mean, the intention of our legislation is 100% accurate. It promotes the safety of South African investors. But like I said, it's too easy, I think, to get around it at the moment. But be ethical, because in the short term, that business will last. You'll probably make a lot of money, but why does anyone start a business? I mean, if you're just starting a business to make money, in my opinion, you probably are not going to be successful. You've got to start a business because you believe in your product. You want to change the world. Money, and I mean, I work with money. Money is what is my business, And I can see from clients that have been the most successful, it's it was never, the money was never the focus. It was doing the thing. It was building the factory. It was, moving the goods from X to Y in the better way. It was what they wanted to do within the industry rather than just focusing on the money. And I think if you're going to start a financial services company, know what your competitive advantage is, know how you are going to improve investors' lives, and then double down and do it, and make sure that you're doing it in the right way, and you will be very successful long term. I've no doubt.
Yeah.
That's best advice I can give you.
Absolutely. Solving the problem is always the biggest part of that entire equation. Gary, a pleasure catching up with you. Thanks so much for your time. Of course, Gary Booysen is founder and CEO of Rand Swiss.